Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor. And, I'm recording. We have the team all over the world right now. And I'm recording from Las Vegas today. And it's so chilly, so cold. I actually, just came from training practice with my Shifu, my Shaolin Tai Chi teacher that comes directly from the Shaolin Temple. And he was educating us in Buddhist beliefs that when there's very strong winds and really strong cold, we gotta be attentive to our own stupidity. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, to our own ignorance. So I'm checking in with you like that with those vibes. But I'm also checking in with so much joy in my heart and awe and kind of a sacred mystery of grace because our guest today, we kind of re-encounter each other or found each other through the ethers of the internet, right, in the inner web. But I think you'll be really surprised of who she is and feeling her frequency and her energy, like we were, our team and myself, of having her presence here at the Spirituality Now podcast. Kind reminder, Spirituality Now podcast is a podcast really based on practical, actionable, result-oriented spirituality, leadership-oriented, mastery of your life, not the lives of others, but of your life-oriented. And we keep it practical, we keep it simple, we keep it with one simple focus, mastery. So my guest today, her name is Vraj Devi. Vraj Devi is an international yoga teacher, wellness therapist, Kirtan leader, and author of Spiritual Revolution. She has published 3 Kirtan Mantra albums, Loving Grace, Beloved, and the most recent album in 2022, Love Light. She has lived 20 years studying and teaching in India. Vraj Devi was blessed to be immersed in the Bhakti Yoga path. By the way, Bhakti means devotion. She has dedicated her life to this sacred path and continues to be inspired along the journey of life-sharing sacred music, Satsang, and devotional service in a natural and loving way. And I'm sure we're going to find far much more of her. Beloved Vraj Devi, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and your voice is really healing. We have incredible friends, musicians. We have a friend. Her name is Grace Terry. She was in the podcast. She's the founder of the Infinite Voice Academy. And being in her presence and learning from her, she has taught us how to listen to the frequency of the voice of someone else. And your frequency is like putting me in a very meditative state. So I'll do my best, to remember that I'm the host and that I got to ask some questions and bring your gifts, your wisdom into the podcast. So Vraj Devi, let's begin. Usually in our podcast, we begin with all of our beautiful, wise guests. We begin where the beginning was for you. And this is, before you really enter into the embodiment of who Vraj Devi is today, who was called to India, who was called to Kirtan. What a beautiful gift you are giving to our world. Music is really a path of enlightenment through the voice and through the chanting and through the songs. Where did Vraj Devi began? Where did your journey begin when you were a little child?
Yeah, so I was actually brought up in New Zealand, and my ancestry, I have a very mixed ancestry, but Maori is quite a predominant lineage of mine that I come from in New Zealand through my father's family. And so we were brought up really in tune with nature. So the first kind of spiritual experiences for sure were as children, me and my sisters, in nature and honoring the divine within the nature setup and just naturally feeling like these little fairies of the rainforest in the beauty of what New Zealand is. So that was my early years. And music and dance has always been a huge part of our lives growing up. So it was quite natural once I started going into the yoga traditions of India. It really kind of matched up with the sacred music of the Maori combining into the Indian yogic mantra and chanting. Because for me, it really there's no difference. And for us on the spiritual path, these ancient languages, these ancient wisdoms, it comes from that same divine source.
Wow, it is so true that it comes from the same divine source. But I wonder why, because you said you were, I love that you just said that you were a fairy in the forest or in the nature, right? But how did this, before we even go into the body of your work, in the practice, I can feel the communion, right? I can feel the kind of divine DJing, right? From the Maori culture to the sacred Sanskrit traditions where most of the spiritual work in humanity comes from. I mean, Mother India, we have the Buddha teachings, we have the Upanishads, we have the Vedas, we have the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Mahabharata, we have these rich, potent foundational structures for our spiritual singing frequency life. But what began? So was it a natural thing for you to begin to be drawn to that? Was it like a river to the ocean kind of thing, or were there abrupt storms that had you decide this is where I'm going to dedicate my path to?
Well, actually, a bit of both, because naturally, as I said, as children, we were in the nature, and so that was like a sanctuary. But I did have quite a tumultuous upbringing within my household. And when I was 22 years old, my sister, who was 2 years older than me, she passed away under very dubious circumstances. And I was in America at the time, and it was a huge shock, and it was a tragedy, and still to this day is like it was a huge pivotal point in my life, and the most traumatic experience I ever had. So it really catapulted me into the life of that I'm living now, because when we are in great tragedy, that is when we are shaken to the core, and that's when we really come to realize what is important, and not to waste time, and to really, it got me so deep on track, because I was actually heading to India when I got the call from my mother that I needed to go straight back to New Zealand. So that was it was like this huge thing that Mother India will only call you when it is right for you to go. So
Absolutely.
so that was then just a few months after my sister passed from her body, and went through all of that in New Zealand, was the following year that I ended up going to India, which before I actually went to India, I was so blessed to be hanging out with all of the Ram Dass community in America.
Oh,
So that was my first, I met India through the Ram Dass community before I even got there.
wow, Vraj
Yeah.
Devi, I'm beginning to relate to you so much. So when your sister transcended in the form of her body, you were 22? You were 20?
Yes, 20,
Okay,
22.
that's very interesting. How old was she, if you don't mind me asking?
She was 24.
Okay, so she was really young. It's
Mm.
interesting what you just said, how really tragedy breaks us open, right, into
Mm.
this path of bhakti, which is your path. Evidently, I can feel it in your voice. And bhakti means it's a deeper devotion. It's not the devotion that the dictionary status. It's a devotional offering. It's kind of becoming a recipient of the divine, right? And I'm being this vehicle of transcendental healing and illumination and opening and inviting for the transcendent to other beings. And I love that you just said, Mother India will call you when you are ready. It's so true for me. The first time we went to India, we were invited by the president of India to go teach. To go teach something called the parent talk system, worth educational, pure educational. My spiritual ego was at the highest peak, Vraj Devi. And so I was
Wow.
like, oh, we got invited by the president. Oh, you know, so India invited us. India brought us in. But when we arrived, all prepared to teach, to be the non plus ultra, India humbled us, and India did not have us teach, and we ended up living in the ashram of Amachi, of Sai
Oh,
Baba. We ended up in the Rishikesh, in the Kriya Yoga Institute, meeting an avatar, Babaji Nagaraj, and all of that. But why I'm
wow.
saying this, is because there is such a powerful frequency, not only in your voice, Raj Devi, and in the way that you are relating to something so traumatic, which is the loss of someone. I myself died at 17, and I'm alive and kicking for some karmic reason right now, right?
Wow.
But it is those that have been most of the times broken open who can sing the song of the divine. And so you encounter the Ramdas community in that time. So we're going to go through the Ramdas thing because I've had in my show a couple of people really related to them, to Ramdas, and I had the privilege to record Ramdas before he died for a film. So it's giving me shivers a little bit that you are here. So tell me a little bit. So this broken open, you are with the community around us. You begin to know of India. How was it? What was the detonation that the Ramdas love all, serve all, kind of all encompassing love, be here now kind of vibe brought into your voice and into the future of your seva, of your practice, of your devotional service?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it, is serve all, love all. Because really, when I came into their community, I was supposed to only go up to, I was staying with Rameshwar Das, who was very close with Ramdas and his wife. And I was supposed to stay for the weekend, and I didn't end up leaving for a few months. And it was exactly that. It was the first time in my life that the first moment I stepped foot in their home, it was, Maharaji pictures were everywhere. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder who this Indian dude is. And it kind of permeated their house, that love all, serve all energy. I met so many of the Ramdas community, including Ramdas, over the years, and had personal connection with them. And they really walk the talk. I've never met someone in their close Ramdas community who was not full of that love all, serve all energy. It's literally, it's palpable when you're in their sphere.
Yes.
It's just like this loving embrace, like they talk about Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba's blanket that is covering them. And it's like this, there's a security of love in the environment, and such a peace when you're with these beings who are in the now, because that's all we have. And they really taught me about that. And it didn't matter if you're Krishna Das or, whoever you are, you're doing the dishes, someone's going to the vegetable garden to get vegetables, someone, we're all part of it. There's no hierarchy. It's everyone is equal and everyone is serving. And that's what they really taught me, that, because, I was brought up in New Zealand. It's a Western country, and we didn't spend that much time in the tribal lands in New Zealand growing up. I did that more in my late teens and early adulthood. So my first true experience of a spiritual community certainly was Ram Dass and his divine God brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's a very powerful, Vrajdevi. I really believe that, for some people, I mean, you were really young, right? We are all young in the concept of the age, universally wise. Honestly, I was talking to my youngest son today about a couple of experiences that I've had spiritually, and I said, "So, Mom, but you are old." I'm like, "Well, I'm old for you compared by age, but in the principles of other teachers that have been before us and the wisdom that has been before us, I'm just a baby. I'm just a kindergartner of creation." So Vraj Devi, so you went immersed. It's amazing because the teacher found you, the teacherhood energy, and what you are sharing. I do want to tell people that there is a fragrance when someone lives, walks, thinks. They are the real deal, right? It's like incense that you don't have to light up. You are in the presence of the sacred. You are in the presence of the divine, and they are doing the dishes, brooming, which I love,
Yes.
wiping the floor, and it's the same. And that's what the old saying of enlightenment, right? Like before enlightenment, chopping wood, carrying water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And so it's so beautiful, Vraj Devi. There is something in your voice that I'm feeling like, this painful longing, joyful bliss for the divine. I don't know if it's because I can feel the presence of your sister, I can relate to most of what you've shared, but also this kind of singing your way to enlightenment. So tell us about it. So you are in this presence, you are already, like, your path is already, it's kind of, the Stoics talk about this term called amor fati, like love for faith, not faith, but the faith of a high transcendental thing. And I feel that part of your karmic path, bhakti path was already chosen. Soul-wise, it was already there waiting for you to say yes to. So where did that begin? You arrived to India, and what happens when you arrive to Mother India? What? Because I'm sure your life was more transformed than it was before as soon as you arrived there.
Oh, yeah. Well, absolutely. Because actually, what happened was after my sister passed and I was with my family for a few months in New Zealand, I went back to America, and literally within, I would say, probably a month, I met Shyam Das, who was one of Ram Das's dear godbrothers from back in, the original guys that went to India to meet Neem Karoli Baba. And I met Shyam Das, who was a great Vaishnav Sanskrit scholar, Bhakta, on the path. And when I met him, it was like this instant connection. And we really just hit it off like best friends immediately. And the first thing he said to me is, one of the first things he said to me, well, he thought I was Indian, first up. He started speaking to me in Gujarati, one of the northern Indian dialects. And I was like, oh, who is this crazy man? And then we were together for days. And we couldn't stop speaking. I mean, I was so intrigued by him, and he was true satsang. It was really deep, wisdom-filled person. And one of the first things he said was, you should come to India. And I was like, well, yes, I was on my way to India last year. And I told him a little bit about what had just happened. Anyway, I end up arriving in India. The first place I land in New Delhi, and then a taxi arranged by Shyam Das brings us straight to Vrindavan, to the Neem Karoli Baba ashram. And that's where I spent 6 months straight in India, absorbed from the very moment I got in the ashram. It was like I was home, and I was so excited, like a little child. I mean, I don't usually get up early in the mornings, but in India, I was waking up in the first 3 weeks of me arriving there. I was up at 3, 4 in the morning, boom, with so much energy. And I was, there's nothing much is going on in the ashram at 4 in the morning, except for some people maybe sweeping. And then there's these 24-hour Hare Krishna, Hare Rama chanting Kirtan Wallas down in the temple, the Sitaram temple. So I would sit with them, and, it was just incredible. It was one of the most heartwarming experiences in terms of sacred music, because some of these, they've been up for God knows how many hours, and, they're off key, the electricity shuts off, the harmonium's out of tune, and they did not care. It was not about perfect pitch. It wasn't about being a professional musician. It was about singing your heart out with bhav, with bhakti, with this devotional mood of God, and that was flowing through them. So they may have had croaky voices and off key, and it didn't matter. And it was beautiful. It really touched my heart. And I sat with them often in the Neem Karoli Baba temple, which was some of my first great inspirations in India.
Wow, it's so beautiful. As you are sharing, I feel I'm there. I feel I'm in the satsangs. I feel I'm in the kirtans. I can feel it through your voice. There's a palpable, ever-present moment experience, even though it happened before, it's still happening now, and through your singing and through your book. So let's go to talk about that. So you go through all this process. You obviously are in the path of devotional service. Like there's no doubt on my side of the story of meeting Vraj Devi in this infinitism. I don't know how to say it in English, but infinitum moment, this second where eternity resides, right? So tell me about your books. So you published a couple of books, and then you published Kirtan. So how did that go? What was your first book about? And walk us through the journey a little bit.
Well, actually, so Shyam Das passed away in 2013, and I was already starting to produce an album, a Kirtan album, with his blessings. And then, he passed away. So it was kind of like it pushed me to really just finish it and put it out there. And it was dedicated to him. And then, so over the years that I spent with Shamdas, I learned many different kinds of languages from India. So the Vrajvasha language of India, that's like a Sanskrit-based language, and he used to do translations with me of these poems. So there's a collection of poems in honor of the goddess, the river goddess Yamuna Devi. And one day I found, my little scrappy notebooks with my handwriting of, because he was quite a whirlwind of energy and, Shakti and Bhakti combined. So to keep up with him was, you had to be, it was a quick pace. So, I had some notes of what he had been translating. And then again, it was like, okay, so it was like something inside of me was like, you need to publish this. So the first book I ever brought out was translations of these collection of poems in honor of the goddess Yamuna. And then
Wow.
yes, which are really very, very beautiful. And it took me back, like you just said, those timeless moments. It took me straight back into the moments when we were actually sitting on the banks of the Yamuna River, when he would go into some incredible, ecstatic moments of blissful expressions of he was having the experience of what he was telling me. It was really, it was very profound, spending time with such a character. And so that was it was an offering of love through his grace and through the original poets, because this is poetry written 500 years ago in honor of the goddess.
Wow. Wow,
So,
Vraj Devi, I'm going to interrupt you here in a
yes, sure.
conscious way, because I, it's the more I undo myself. I'm not going to say I'm doing, or I meditate to undo my mind. The spiritual journey is more of a letting go of an undoing, like a mathematic of removal instead of adding, right? That a return to simplicity, a return to nature. And when I hear you share this, like for me, it's 500 years ago. I wonder, how long your soul has been doing this. I know I'm totally going into enter into woo-woo land for those of you who hear me, and they're going to say, she said that it was practical spirituality. I feel so much the sacred here. I feel like this was something that you've done before over and over again. I know people call it reincarnation, people call it karmic path, but it feels, I can feel the connection between Shamdas and you, like that deepest love that you cannot define in the dictionary as a human dual love. It transcends the body, it transcends that. So that's why writing such books, recording such music touches the soul of mankind regardless of time. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it really is. And actually it's interesting because, I have a 6-year-old son nowadays, so I don't get as much free time for hours and hours of translation of these divine Sanskrit love poetry. But when I do get time, which is rare, somehow there's this cognition of information that comes to me without me even knowing. How did I even know that word particularly means that? And then I will go and check with some of my god brothers and say, hey, does this word mean that? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm just, because it's through this ongoing infinite, as we know, the soul, the spirit is infinite, it's beyond time and space, and his energy and other great teachers who have been in my life who are no longer in their physical bodies, but it's like it's even more potent. It's like they are so with me and they are giving me the teachings still. They're helping me and assisting me when I need it. And it's very, very interesting. And that kind of leads me into the Spiritual Revolution book, which is my recent book, which came out just at the end of 2022, Spiritual Revolution, Unconventional Life Lessons from My Teachers. So it's all personal stories. And that actually began with, again, some ratty handwritten, I'm very old school, notebooks of mine that I was kind of jotting down some of these incredible experiences that I was having in India. And my husband said to me one day, you need to put those scrappy notebooks into the computer and put it digital. And, I'm like, oh, I don't need to do that. And he's like, well, maybe you do because, remember your mum threw away some of your books? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's true. So he kind of inspired me to start putting it on digital form and typing it out, which I did. And then literally within I typed out all the stories in India. Then all of this other stuff just started flooding into me. And I wrote the book within a couple of months. It was so fast. I was spending like every day up until around 2 in the morning. I couldn't stop typing. And then I would be going to sleep and I would wake up and it was already the next story was there, ready. It was just it just wouldn't stop. So it wasn't just India. Then it became other parts of the world and other stories that just kept coming in and it was just like this huge download dump onto the computer.
Wow, that's true. It says that when a book wants to write itself, it will go through no matter if we're sleeping, right? Like
Yes.
it will write itself when a message is ready to be heard, the message will write itself through the one willing to receive it. And so
Yes.
this is where A Course in Miracles says, the message will be accomplished. The message
Mhm.
that God wants to give, that Great Spirit wants to give will be accomplished in spite of our doubts. So I love, love,
Mhm.
love, love that. So now talk to me about your music. Talk about how is it? Where is it? Like how do you render? Do you only publish the books and the kirtans, or do you also give concerts right now? Do you coach
Yes.
people? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so for me, the sacred music part, the Bhakti Yoga part of the yoga tradition really has just grabbed my heart from the very beginning. I've always loved it, and so I've always seen, in my classes and workshops and retreats, the transformation of mantra for people, even they've never heard it before, and how touching it is. It's like an instant. It touches the heart instantly when you're open to receive it. It's important we do yoga asana and pranayama and all of these things in meditation. They're good and they all have their place. But with chanting, I've experienced people having these really very instant transformational shifts because of the vibrations. And it's like there's something very powerful in the Sanskrit language that is like these incredible keys that unlock this divine potential inside everyone's heart. It's just like this key turns, and something really interesting over the kind of that COVID period. And we would do some concerts. Smaller gatherings of people, and some people that had never ever stepped foot in a yoga studio, which is predominantly where I was singing before in like yoga festivals and things. And this was just in people's homes. And so just, all different kinds of characters would come and they had never heard Sanskrit before and never heard that kind of sacred music. And they were really touched. It was like they were crying or they were saying that they felt this energy of maybe their mother had passed away, or many, many things on a soul level were being brought to the surface for people. And it really, really touched me and reconfirmed to me the power of the sacred music and how it is. Music has been in all of the ancient traditions for such a lot, from the beginning. Well, there is no beginning, but for all the ancient wisdoms that we can think of in
Right.
all of the cultures, we have sacred music as like the heart. It used to be we would gather around the fire every night and we would
Mm.
sing our hearts out together, and it unites us, it unifies us, it brings our consciousness into that divine frequency, which is something that we need to be tuning in. I feel it's a huge life mission of mine is to connect people to their own spiritual revolution, to their unique divine self that is just one breath away from being remembered.
Mm, wow. I think you sing while you share. And I want people to know that, we'll put all the links for them to find your books, your sharings, your concerts, your music. But I also like for people to know, to emphasize that you also have your spiritual life is not in odds with being a mom, having a husband, living a life of, it's like chopping wood, carrying water, before enlightenment, after enlightenment, getting married, having kids. It's all part of the spiritual path. It's all part of our practice to master our lives, right? Our living, the mastery of ourselves. And I love that you shared that part too, because most often people think like, oh my gosh, if she's a singer of Kirtan, if she writes these spiritual books, she knows Ram Dass, she has these spiritual connections. They think, oh no, she can be a mom, she can be a wife, she can have a life. Actually, for me, that's true spirituality. If you can incorporate all of what being's human into this present moment and not judge anything as spiritual or unspiritual, that's where we will experience devotion and enlightenment. So, beloved Vraj Devi, we have a little ritual at the end of the podcast, only if you choose to do so. If you would like to give us a blessing, a little something of yours for the audience that will be following you, will be listening to the podcast before we part ways for now.
Okay, sure. I mean, it would be wonderful if you want to know more and you want to listen to my music. Please do go on all the online platforms. My music is there on Apple Music, Spotify, Vraj Devi. You can also see me on Facebook, Instagram. And all the links will be posted. There's my website, vrajdevi.com. Support the work, and really share it with others who you feel would be uplifted and inspired by it. So, I would just encourage you to do that, and to be in the divine presence that is always with you. And namaste. Love, 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 light. Blessings.
Thank you, Vraj Devi. And we'll make sure to put all the links. And hopefully, we'll get to hear you in concert one day. We would love to be in the presence of your Kirtan. But I think we were able to feel a little bit through this podcast today. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, beloved Vraj Devi. Again, we will put all the links. Please follow, support a fellow citizen of humanity actually doing a path of bhakti that benefits us all, that sings her heart with devotion, that writes the words of the ancient for the modern times. And we send you all our love. We thank you. Les mandamos un beso. Adiós.
Thank you. Adiós.
Thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and share us with a friend. To learn more about how to live more present in the moment and take your faith into action, visit thelaflorteachings.com/faith to access the free training of 21 Days of Faith in Action today.